And let me preface this video by saying that this title is objectively clickbait, although that was the first thing that I said when I saw the film. Well, there are a couple things that I really can't stand about Saltburn. I do understand that there is a lot to love about this film. My personal favorite being the cinematography. There are a lot of shots in this film that are stunning, that really capture your eye. They're beautiful. And even when they're not capturing your eye, they are alluring you. During scenes of small talk with the characters, or scenes that are less important and just there to carry the story on. The aesthetics were also something that was spot on to me. The music used in the time period stuck out, and they definitely tried to pull on my nostalgia heartstrings by playing Arcade Fire and Cold War Kids. And what the hell do you youngins know about that shit? The score within itself was tight as hell, from the soundtrack to the instrumental parts. I also thought that the two main characters of the film were both strong as characters and actors, originally. But when the film ended, I was left with a lackluster feeling. A feeling that there could have been so much more to make an alright story a lot better and more compelling and believable. Because I think that there are a couple things that are quite literally unfucking believable in this film. Things that left me with more questions than answers. Now trust me, I'm well aware that it's good for a film to leave you with questions, to mess your brain up so badly that you're left to ponder and push the envelope of certain concepts that are presented by the film. Some of my favorite films are like this, and they do this very well, ensuring that your questions are purposeful and leaving you with some good brain food to digest. While other movies can leave you wondering if this is really the way that people interact with each other. The way that things happen naturally. And if humans are truly just that fucking dumb, along with that lackluster void pestering you on your way home. Saltburn was confusing. Once again, there were many things that I thoroughly enjoyed about this film. And considering the fact that everybody and their grandmother watched and loved it, I was ready to go in doing the same. And while I did start off really enjoying it, from the characters, the soundtrack, to the cinematographies and the aesthetics, there was a point that hit where I began to get more and more annoyed. More annoyed with the film as it got closer and closer to the end. Everyone also told me that this movie was crazy. Insane even. But when it got to those parts, I feel like they were executed so poorly that I didn't get that jaw-dropping, knee-jerking reaction that a movie is supposed to give you during the grand finale, or the big reveal, or the craziness of the film. But maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about it. Spoilers ahead. I'm not gonna do an entire thorough recap like I did with the Devilman video. I feel like there's not a need to do so since everyone's seen this movie, and if not, you can go watch it. So moving on, we're gonna navigate this video by follows the budding friendship between two characters. Felix, who has a lot of money, and Ollie, who doesn't. While these characters have a lot of chemistry together, we quickly come to realize that one of our two main characters is obviously a creep and maybe a bit of a sociopath. Ollie, from the beginning of the movie, shows red flags while he watches Felix have sex with other girls and has zero people skills. Nobody likes him, talks to him, women avoid him because he's poor and a fucking weirdo. But Jacob Elordi's character, Felix, sympathizes with the little weirdo, befriending him and even coming to admire him, the more that they spend time together due to Felix learning about his family and situation. Felix learns that Ollie comes from a poor family of two drug dealer parents, no siblings, and a traumatic past that includes him having to gag his mom to help her in some sort of drug-induced dilemma. All really dark stuff that Felix admires Ollie for, praising him for being strong as they share a beer together. Felix and Ollie grow closer and closer through heartfelt montages to where Felix invites Ollie over to Saltburn, his home and a literal castle, for some fun and enjoyment until they go back to school again. I think it might be the summertime, I'm not entirely sure, it doesn't fucking matter, but Ollie is invited, and it's not for an outrageous amount of time either. So when the boys go to Saltburn, hijinks ensue. We come to meet the rest of Felix's family, his bumbling idiot parents, Felix's sister Venetia, who wants to have sex with Ollie for some reason, and Farley, who's already been introduced as the snobby, cunty cousin who also goes to Oxford with the boys and who's been picking on Ollie since the beginning of the movie. Throughout scenes of the family getting along and having an all-around great time with Ollie, we see Ollie snooping around, familiarizing himself with the family and their interest to get on their good side, and being a creep as he watches Jacob Elordi/Felix jerk off. Side note, the movie's obviously got some homosexual indication considering Ollie's attraction to Felix. Something that's never elaborated on, however, is how Felix truly feels about Ollie. We'll just chalk it up to friendship and put a pin in that. But on the other hand, was Felix coming and moaning out loud on purpose? Because when I be jerking off and I know people are on the other side of the fucking house, I be silent like a fucking mouse, bro. How the hell are you sharing a bathroom that is literally the link between you and your bestie's room, and you're just coming and moaning like it's a thing to do? Well, somewhere in the mix, Ollie tries to rizz up Felix's mom. Moving on, Venetia, as mentioned, likes Ollie, so she courts him and gets fingered by him one night, and I have something else to say. This is where Ollie's character begins to shift at this point of the movie, and this is also the part where the movie starts to irk me and fall apart in my eyes. So firstly, it's kind of weird to me that no one is getting turned off by the wackadoodle ass shit that Ollie be saying. There are several points for me where his character begins to change in a way that is completely unnatural, and we'll talk more about that later, but here are my first two examples. As previously mentioned, when he rizzes up Mom, he does so by calling her beautiful. He says, "You're so fucking beautiful." But why is everybody swooning all over him? I mean, with that jawline, yeah, I guess I would be too, but on the flip side, that is completely inappropriate. Is the family so docile and ignorant that they're allowing for Ollie to just flirt with the mom? Or we're just gonna allow him to tell Venetia that she's got an eating disorder right before he fingers her? If someone came to rizz me up and started off by whispering in my ear, "You have severe depression. You love sleeping in, but tomorrow, baby boy, you're gonna wake up at 8 a.m. for me. You're gonna be so happy for me, baby boy." My boner would be fucking destroyed. Deflated, even. My nether regions would be offended for me. But let's move on. Farley sees this incident of Ollie and Venetia and lets Felix know. Felix confronts Ollie and is upset, but is quelled when Ollie claims that Venetia came onto him and that he didn't want to embarrass her. And so the friendship continues on. Not sure why Felix doesn't bring anything up to Venetia or asks her questions about the incident. Later on, Venetia says that she's annoyed that Ollie chose Felix over her, shitting on her brother for quote-unquote not sharing Ollie. She also claims that Felix loves his toys, even the ones that he's no longer interested, and I don't get that either. What the hell is that supposed to mean? If he wasn't interested in Ollie, he wouldn't have given a shit about the fact that you guys were getting all frisky with each other the night before. But from start to finish of the story, Felix cares for or shows a care for Ollie. Furthermore, in the earlier confrontation of Felix asking how Ollie could do that with Venetia, he says, "You're my friend. How could you do it with Venetia when you came here to spend time with me?" And honestly, I get it. I don't think there's anything about that that isn't justified. Now, on one hand, it does pose the question on whether or not Felix is feeling something more. And this points back to the scene where Felix is jerking off loud as hell in the bathroom. But with that out of the way, and more realistically, if my best friend were to come over for a weekend and slept with one of my siblings, I'd be pissed. And if not pissed, I would feel a little weird about it. Unless I was actively trying to hook my friend up with my sibling because they seem like a good match for each other, I would not want that shit to happen behind my back. It would just make things weird and it would suck. Venetia is a strange character though. The only thing that the movie has shown us or will show us about her is that she has an eating disorder. One that they never mention after this point either. Moving along, that night during the dinner party where Venetia rags on her brother for no reason, Farley pulls a dick move and puts a karaoke song for Ollie, singing the lyrics. "You bring me food, I need it. You give me love, I feed it. And look at the two of us in sympathy. With everything we need, I never want anything, it's easy. You buy whatever I need." And then something about, "I love you, you pay my rent." This embarrasses Ollie, I guess. And for revenge, Ollie goes up to Farley's room and has sex with him, making him say that he'll behave because of how much of a rizzler he is. The next day, Ollie gets caught in a lie after Felix brings Ollie to his home on the day of his birthday, to which Felix finds out that Ollie's been lying about his upbringing. He doesn't come from a broken home, but one with siblings, 2 loving parents, and a nice, big-ass house. Felix is obviously upset by this, and their friendship takes a mad massive strain. During the confrontation of Ollie being caught in a lie, Felix says that after Ollie's birthday, they will go back to Oxford and go their separate ways. The parents proceed to throw a massive party for Ollie's birthday party, which they've been saying that they would do so, to which the two characters that Ollie had sexual relations with straight up diss him, along with Felix. Eventually he follows Felix out and a girl to the garden maze, and he watches them have sex, confronting Felix after they're done. Felix is obviously upset, saying that Ollie needs professional help, while Ollie says that he loves Felix, and that he played the part and the role for him just like everybody else does, before giving his wine bottle to Felix and vomiting in the field beside him. The next morning, Felix is found dead in the garden, and while Venetia and Farley are crying and upset, the parents barely react, to the point of which they just tell everybody to go to lunch as though nothing is occurring. During this lunch, Farley attempts to point a finger at Ollie, implying something off about him, but Ollie says, "You were off doing coke the night of the party," which is a big deal for some reason to a bunch of rich snobs, I guess, and Farley gets kicked out of the house for a second time. They also have the funeral, and it's the only time where we see the parents cry. I also don't even know if the dad cries, but I know the mom cries for sure. Also, Ollie gets completely naked and puts his dick in the newly dug soil at Felix's grave, humping the ground and crying. Later on, Venetia is bathing and Ollie pulls up. Venetia attempts to tell him off, telling him that she saw him bawling his eyes out at the funeral and that she felt something for him, but that she remembered that he had only been in Felix's life for 6 months, so he had no real reason to cry over Felix's death. I have so much to say about this scene, but for now we will leave it and move on. She then says he's like a spider weaving his spidery web, and then she says, "No, I'm just kidding, you're like a moth. You're attracted to shiny things and you leave holes everywhere you go." Then they kiss for some reason and he leaves. Next morning, she's found dead, allegedly by her own wrists. Another funeral is had, and then Ollie is called to Dad's office. The father finally asks Ollie when he's going to leave, while also saying that Elspeth doesn't want to let Ollie go. Ollie says, "Well, in that case, I'll stay as long as I need to," and the dad literally writes him a check telling him to get the fuck out. Some time passes, and coincidentally, somehow, Elspeth happens upon a little bakery that Ollie's sitting in. They catch up a bit, and Ollie is apologizing for the recent death of the father, which is something that he read about in the newspaper. Elspeth invites him back to Saltburn, saying that now is their time, or something like that. And finally, we see that the entire time during the movie, while he's been narrating from start to finish, he's been speaking to none other than the mom, who is basically comatose or on her deathbed, hooked up to a bunch of machines that are barely keeping her alive. He says that they finally made it, but that there had to be so many mistakes and accidents that went into it. The movie obviously thinks we're fucking stupid, so it walks us through every single accident that has occurred, while also showing us the fact that the reason behind each and every accident was none other than Oliver himself, constantly sabotaging things and killing everybody so that Saltburn would end up as his. He then finishes off his tangent talking about how he never was in love with Felix, but that he loved him and also hated him sometimes, and that he hated the rest of the family because of how docile, gullible, stupid, and ignorant they were due to their wealth. He then pulls the plug, killing her, therefore getting all of Saltburn to himself, as she signed the estate over to him before she died. The movie ends with him dancing all around the empty house with his wiener hanging out. And now I've got a lot to say. In order to make this semi-digestible, we will be using more chapters to go through. I think my biggest gripe with this movie is the fact that I don't give a shit when anybody dies. And I always give a shit when people die. But honestly, these people don't seem to give much of a shit either. Is it a rich people thing that occurs? Your son dies and you just don't give enough of a shit to even shed a tear? I think it makes what's supposed to be a tough scene something that you're indifferent towards. Even though Farley does mention how it's odd that nobody gives a shit, it doesn't make it any less strange. And it's still kind of hard to understand what the lesson is here. Rich people are jaded to loss? Why does finishing lunch matter to this strange man when his only son has just been found dead? Why do the parents not give a shit about the death of their only son? Is it because all the money in the world can somehow lighten the blow of a family member dying? Is it to show that they didn't have much of a relationship with the son because of how rich and pretentious they were? Are they a mirror of the audience in the sense that we physically cannot give a shit about Felix's death because we didn't spend enough time with him as a character to even care or shed a tear over his death? And while stylistically I guess it works, it just irks me more than anything, because I wish I knew more about this character. I wish he had more to say in the final scene of him being alive. More fighting words to share with Ollie, someone who's laid all the cards out on the table. More emotions, which would have made sense considering their dynamic and the revelation of Oliver being a flat-out liar. More frustration to unleash onto the devastating awareness that his friend is not who he thought he was. I don't know if it's ironic or purposeful that the characters we give the least of a shit about are the ones who talk the most. The mom, the dad, Venetia. And again, maybe I'm not deep enough for this movie, because even if that is the point, it doesn't make it any more compelling to me. Especially not if it's supposed to be a thesis on the upper class and how disconnected they are from everything around them, because it simply isn't realistic. No matter how much money you have, death hits us all. So, about... What's interesting is that in the scene where Ollie approaches her, as previously mentioned, she says that she saw him bawling his eyes out at the funeral, and that she felt for him, but remembered he's only been in Felix's life for the past 6 months, and that he had no reason to cry over Felix's death for this reason. And I'm gonna be a crazy person here, but this is an irrelevant fact. Let's say in a hypothetical world, a happy alternate universe, Felix and Ollie get together some way, somehow. Ollie's introduction to Saltburn is literally meeting Felix's family as a potential spouse. Let's say that in this alternate universe, Felix dies. Not by the hands of Ollie, but just because of some other unfortunate reason. Tragedy strikes and he would die. Would this conversation really be appropriate? Would it really be fair for Venetia to be sitting there telling Ollie that he has no reason to cry, that he has no business being a part of the family, that he has no business being a part of Felix's life in the first place? And now you might be saying, Elle, shut the hell up. This AU fanfiction that you're creating is a nonsensical one. Fine, then let's bring it back to the current universe. At this time of the movie, nobody is aware of what Ollie has done. And Ollie's only real sin is being kind of annoying, being kind of messy for finger-fucking Venetia. Nobody even knows that he slept with Farley. And again, in the viewer's eyes, we know all of this. We know he's a creep. We know he's a weirdo. But nobody else is aware of this. In fact, nobody even knows how messy he is, as no one's aware of the fact that he's managed to sleep with Farley along with mess around with Venetia. But it doesn't stop Ollie and Felix from objectively being best friends. It doesn't stop Felix's obvious fondness for Ollie. Fondness, which is what led Felix to bring Ollie to Saltburn in the first place. No one knows about the conversations they've had, the experiences they've shared, or how much they've loved each other as friends for Venetia to be coming out her mouth sideways, telling him that his emotions of sadness aren't warranted. And I know you're saying, but Elle, she's telling him off because she can see through his bullshit. Why does she see through his bullshit? Because when they first had a conversation together, she said to his face that he was real, stating that that must be the reason why Felix was friends with him. So now we're just talking about inconsistencies with the character. If anybody should have accused him or seen through his bullshit and confronted him about it in the scene, it should have been Farley at the very least, but more on that later. You said he was real initially, and now you think otherwise. Is it because you're suddenly suspicious of him killing Felix for some reason? Or is it because you're mad at him for not being chosen by him at the end of the day? Before we move on from Venetia, I'm going to further put my 2 cents of personal experiences in by saying this. Me and my best friend have known each other for maybe about 3 years, but have only been objectively getting close to each other for the last 6 months. Granted, we've known each other a while, but have started to get to that point of closeness, of meeting each other's family members, and hanging out consistently recently. But God forbid, if anything were to happen to either of us, there would not be a single person in my or her family who would tell us some weird shit like that. No one would look at either of us and say, wow, you haven't even been here that long. You're a stranger. and you don't belong here. All that to say is that love happens and connections happen, whether they're platonic or romantic. It really doesn't matter how much time it takes. What matters is the fact that whoever you're connecting with is as good of a person as you are, or somebody that you really click with, somebody who benefits your life, somebody who's helpful to you. Now, granted, in this movie, we don't know who Oliver is in the grand scheme of Felix's relationship. Us, the audience, we know that he's a shitter and that he's a weirdo. But the family doesn't know what the fuck Oliver provides for Felix. They don't know about the connection that they've had, and shit like that just fucking happens. People become crazy about each other in a short amount of time. People become best fucking friends in a short amount of time. To act like it's not a thing that fucking happens is stupid. Venetia's stupid for saying this. It's fucked up and it's not fair and it's not right. Saying that he's a moth and that he'll eat the family from inside out, even though, I don't know, he really hasn't done shit that they're aware of for that line to be warranted. Because as previously mentioned, and I'll say it again, we the viewer, of course, we know all the grimy weird shit that he's done. We know about the bathwater. We know he slept with Farley. We know he's been watching Felix have sex with women since their beginning of their friendship. We know like an hour before the scene he stripped butt-ass naked and had sex with Felix's grave. But Venetia, she doesn't know this. Nobody knows this. I think the only one who's had a semblance of awareness is Farley. Through and through, the idea that Ollie's mooching off the family and solidifying that by calling him a moth is a strange one, considering the fact that he's a guest who was invited by Felix for a fixed amount of time. This was never permanent, as they both would be going back to Oxford eventually regardless. So how is any of this poor kid moocher parasite slander warranted towards him? And we'll talk more about the word and the film Parasite later, but until then, back to Venetia for a second, and tying this rant with a pretty little bow. It's just weird as hell. Like, who the hell does Venetia think that she is, to the point of telling Ollie that he has no right to feel sad over his best friend's death, while she truly has no knowledge of the ulterior motives and how deep this truly runs? And I mean, who the fuck is this character Venetia even? Why do I give a shit about her, and why do I give a shit about what she's telling Ollie right now? There's only a few things that we know about her throughout this entire film. 1, eating disorder, and 2, Felix's last friend that he brought to Saltburn developed feelings for Venetia, making things quote-unquote weird. We also have zero context for this. Did Venetia wait outside of the last friend's window, beckoning for him to come have a late-night chat the same way she had done with Oliver this entire time? Questions we'll never get the answers to, but at this point, it's the least of my worries. And honestly, I don't even know if they say Venetia is Felix's sister formally at any point throughout the movie, but it says so online, and I'll just act like I'm the idiot here for not remembering what point they clarified that she is in fact his sister. At the same time, it shouldn't have been something that I questioned throughout the entire movie, having to clarify it with my friend as to whether or not that was true. But you know what? These two, Felix and Venetia, have little to no sibling-like interactions with each other whatsoever to further prove or solidify to me that they are related. And I think that would have been important. When Felix dies, she's destroyed. Devastated even, along with Farley. And at least with Farley, it makes sense. While at Oxford, they're almost always together. And as annoying as Farley can be, you do see that they're cousins or related or bound together in some kind of way. While at Saltburn, however, there's no one-on-one time between Venetia and Felix. And I think this movie would have seriously benefited from a heart-to-heart of Felix and Venetia discussing what exactly went down between her and Ollie. Maybe it could have even come after a scene of Felix finding out that Ollie had lied about his parents being shitters and his dad being dead. This heart-to-heart would have made Venetia a reliable character in our eyes, not just some family member who lounges around drinking all day and looking good for the camera. This hypothetical heart-to-heart could also have made tensions rise even a little more, as Venetia and Felix could have started to piece together how strange Ollie truly was, between his lies, meddling with the family romantically, maybe causing them to connect the dots. But then it would be a little too late, as Ollie would have already made his moves in killing Felix and then Venetia quickly after. And with this alternative ending that would make the story a little bit more interesting, they wouldn't even have to switch whatever scenes would follow, finishing the movie up regardless. In fact, it just would have made this scene between Venetia and Ollie a lot more realistic if she had background knowledge from literally any other character if she just had a conversation with Felix before he died, or with Farley at any point before he just goes missing at some point during the movie. Lastly, this hypothetical conversation could have developed their sibling relationship more, making her devastation at the scene of death a little more grounded and sensical, and maybe even a tearjerker for the audience. But it just doesn't work that way, and it sucks. I don't care for Venetia because I don't know shit about her. And she doesn't know shit about Ollie, so why is she barking at him? What is she yapping about? Well, Venetia, as we know, the next morning is found dead. The only one who's left is Ollie, and I think Ollie is a fucking idiot. But I think that the dad is an even bigger idiot, because both of my kids are dead, and you're the only one left? Where are the investigators? Where are the autopsies? Where is the basic common sense that things between your family were overall peaceful, and now, within the last week, shit has hit the absolute fan, both of your kids have died, and we're the only three standing, mom, dad, and this guy, Oliver? The moment that dad told Ollie to leave and he insisted that he wouldn't, is the moment that I, as a father, would have been like, alright, you know what? You can stay, bro. Until, boom, the fucking cops show up with a couple of questions to ask. Maybe if it was 1975, alright, I'd let the movie slide, but this is the early 2000s. Technology's advanced enough, and we're all watching Criminal Minds right now. Bold as hell of you to assume that two people would die within 1 week under the same roof, and nobody would bat a single eye towards it. But these dumbasses don't. And again, maybe I'm the ass, and it's a dialogue on how disconnected rich people are, but I still don't buy it. Especially with the father's frustration towards Ollie at the end, but I digress. So what happens? Elspeth runs into Ollie at the coffee shop and invites him over to Saltburn. He does so, and we find out the entire time he's been narrating, it's been to Elspeth, hooked up to machines, fighting for her life, and he finally has Saltburn all to himself, telling her that he'll take good care of it. Of course, they have to walk us through the truth behind all the deaths and accidents that have occurred at Saltburn, and everything that's happened leading up to this moment. We're shown that upon meeting Felix, Ollie fucked up Felix's bike tire, therefore giving Ollie a reason to offer his bike over to Felix the day that they met, then sending a message about stealing something from Saltburn through Farley's phone the night that they slept together to get Farley in trouble and kicked out of Saltburn, which is also so stupid to me. It's so stupid. How many of you have sex with somebody that you can't stand, don't really trust, don't really like, and just knock out afterwards? Cause not me, brother. Even if we're dating and you sleep over, for the first, week, I need some fucking horse tranquilizer to knock me out, or maybe 6 shots to the face, bitch, because I be getting nervous as hell. Sleeping beside somebody is very intimate and very vulnerable. So how the hell did Farley just knock out?
Y no me digas no que, Farley's fucking, he's drunk in the scene, he's gotta be drunk, that's why he was so easy to convince, because that makes the scene 15,000 times more dubious. And fuck it, I'll play devil's advocate here. Maybe it would have made Ollie more of an interesting character just to see how much of a slime bag and a piece of shit he truly was, but that wasn't it. Farley shows absolutely no signs of being under any kind of fucking influence. They didn't show him slamming fucking beers like it was a thing to do at the party the night before. So it's not an excuse. It's not an excuse. Not an excuse for him to be comfortable enough to just knock out directly afterwards, even though he's been fucking with Ollie since the beginning of the movie.
Why didn't he just advocate for himself in reference to an email that he never sent? Did he not want to say shit because he didn't want to admit that he and Ollie slept together? Why? Farley seems like the type to throw somebody under the bus. Are we just supposed to pretend that his sassy ass didn't at least try to get a word in? Or that he wouldn't have at least tried to implicate a setup in hopes of ringing some alarm bells for this brain-dead ass family? Even if the parents wouldn't listen, Felix would, as he's proved to do so before in the film while discussing Farley's mother's financial problems. So what's the issue? But moving on, Ollie proceeds to tell Elspeth, borderline corpse, that he wasn't in love with Felix. He loved him, oh god, he loved him, but also he hated him. Okay, cool. Again, it's just annoying that this movie has to tell us all of this instead of just showing us all the development. Maybe if they showed us some real disdain that he had for Felix, so much disdain to where he felt like he had to kill all of his family. Maybe if he was caught by the cops and this entire dialogue of him speaking to the camera was him coming clean about his crime, would have made all of this so much more believable. But instead he's telling Elspeth, and of course, it's most importantly to tell the audience. And it just feels weird. This is where the character's acting also feels the weakest in the entire movie. He doesn't have shit to bounce back off of. He's just narrating to the wind right now, and it isn't as powerful or moving as anything else he's done in the film. And maybe in this scene, if he was more brooding and dark and creepy and like school shooter-ish, it would have made the scene a little more powerful versus how chipper and clever he's seeming. So then we're shown that, of course, whoop-de-doo, he's the one who killed Felix by poisoning him, and somehow he's killed Venetia as well. And I don't care if he threw out the bottle that Felix drank from. It's a suspicious death. Felix is young, rich, and handsome. Why is he dead? There should have been an autopsy. And if not in that moment, then definitely after Venetia's death. He tries to turn the narrative into his annoyance for the rich and how pampered and unaware they were about everything, which was what allowed him to get as far as he did. And while I understand his frustration, I don't know how well it works either. These people are rich and annoying and pretentious, but they took care of you and they didn't ask you for shit in return. They didn't protest your arrival or stay until, of course, both of their children ended up dead. So why are you angry with them? Just for being rich? Okay, I'm mad at rich people too. But if some of them just took care of me for some undisclosed reason for a couple of weeks, I would not bite the hand that fucking feeds me. Or kill every last one of them in the very least, until I have everything that they do. Which is fine. It's fine. It's fine if that's the way that the story ended. It's fine if this was the original plan for Ollie. But then again, what was the original plan for Ollie? Did Ollie first begin this mess because he wanted Felix? Or was it because he wanted Saltburn to himself and Felix was his way in? Also, backtracking a bit, after Felix's death, Farley just goes missing. And how? How does his loud, snotty ass just leave without telling off Ollie, without saying something to someone about how trifling Ollie is in the very least? I just don't get it. Families don't function their way. They're prolific for talking shit in the very least, even if they're too dumb to piece together a murder. Which, if Venetia's dumbass somehow manages to do, why the fuck couldn't Farley? Why the fuck aren't they talking to each other about anything? And they attempt to show us that this family is allegedly close by the cutesy, unconvincing montages at the beginning of the film. So I just don't get it. There's something else I wanted to touch on before I begin to wrap this video up. And originally I wasn't going to bring it up because I thought I was too dumb, too uneducated on the topic, and I thought that it was unrelevant or unfair to think this way. But I'm going to share my thoughts, and it's about this class divide. Now, at the beginning of the story, with the narrative Ollie pushes about his parents being fuck-ups, drug dealers, the dynamic between him and Felix being from two completely different worlds is believable. It makes sense. It's natural. And even in this grand scheme of Ollie doing what he does towards the end of the movie, aka murdering half the family in the hopes of owning Saltburn, it kind of makes sense that he would want it all after having literally nothing. But this is realistically where this character is coming from. A big-ass home with two present and healthy, caring parents. And it's not that it doesn't make sense, I guess. Sure, you can be selfish and always want a lot more than what you already have, constantly and constantly until you do whatever is necessary to get what you don't have. But I honestly don't give a shit. Like, is that bad to say? I don't give a fuck about Ollie. I'll fucking rob his ass too. I don't identify with him. I don't feel bad for him. I don't care for him. While teasing this video on my Instagram, a friend replied to my story, and we talked about our gripes with the film. Which is funny because originally she said we were gonna have to fight because she liked the movie. But after we sat there, we began to peel back the onions of this film, okay? In her words, and I'm getting goosebumps right now, Oliver went from being a potential martyr / champion as a lower class person, successfully overtaking this bastion of generational wealth, to a whiny rich boy that wanted to be more rich. And I couldn't fucking agree more. I don't think that his reasoning for wanting Saltburn so badly is that strong, especially when asking the question of whether or not he began this reign of sabotage to court the love of Felix, or for the grand scheme of taking Saltburn and having it for his own. And once again, while we're looking at his background, where does his intense desperation for wanting Saltburn come from? Where in his character do his murderous tendencies come from? Other than the fact that he's really selfish and allegedly smart as hell. Well, I have a movie full of people that are actually smart as hell, and in a way that is much more realistic and works with the movie. More realistic and more sensical than the way that Saltburn tries to make you believe their characters are so smart. I just watched... and I did it all for this video. I watched the movie during COVID originally, but for some undisclosed reason, I never got to finish it. However, while watching Saltburn, I just know in the back of my mind, I was constantly reminded of Parasite. And I was reminded of the fact that a class struggle story can be done right, and amazingly at that. When the family of the Kims start to slither their way into the rich family of the Parks, one of the main reasons, as though I feel it makes sense and is believable, is because the kids who originally work for the family have something to offer the rich family. The rich family has no idea that the help that they continue to recommend and receive is in fact their own family members, intent on milking these guys of their money. So again, they continue to offer this under the guise of being helpful, and they are super convincing in everything that they have to offer in terms of labor and in the ways of which they orchestrate everything to fall into what they think is their favor. Ali, on the other hand, has nothing to offer to this family. Nothing for them to want to keep him around, other than he's just Felix's friend. Nothing to offer other than, I guess, he's an Oxford student maybe? Maybe that he has nice eyes? Maybe the mom wants to keep him around because he's the ultimate Rizzler, which again is just stupid as hell to me and just doesn't make any sense. It's a fucking mystery as to how this family isn't picking up on the dubious nature of 2 deaths occurring after this chucklehead just waltzes into their lives. And this is a little off topic, but I feel as though the attraction that the mom has to Ali would have even made more sense if maybe the mom was a grifter or a scam artist and saw this in Ali and was attracted to him for it. But no, we don't really have that. We don't really know why she's really into Ali, but I guess she just is. Something else that Parasite does really well is makes you feel bad for most of the characters involved in this absolute shit show. It makes you feel something for them, even with their questionable morals. Everyone's motives are believable. What drives them to do the crazy shit that they end up doing falls perfectly into place when it comes to the grand scheme of the story and how things wrap up towards the end. The story of Parasite manages to make you empathize with most of the parties involved, especially with the poor family, the poor people struggling in this film. I can relate to that shit. You feel for them. You understand why they do all of the things that they do, whether you think it's right or not. And this is why Parasite was so widely acclaimed and praised. The storytelling, the characters, the class divide from beginning to end are realistic and consistent, going hand in hand with one another to weave this masterpiece of a story. And I can't say that I feel the same way about Saltburn. I didn't feel the same gratification that I felt when I finished Parasite. In the very least, I don't care about Ali. His motives don't do shit for me. His background, or lack thereof, definitely doesn't help in solidifying him as a character with clear and understandable motives for me, other than wanting Saltburn because he's a spoiled brat who just wants more than what he already has. He's not relatable, and he's the main fucking character. Not that you're always supposed to relate to the main character, the least they could do is be fucking intriguing, but Ali is not. The Kims want what the Parks have because the Kims live in squalor. They're desperate. They admire the lifestyle of the wealthy. They're oppressors. And they end up biting off more than they can chew with the intention of infiltrating this house to profit off of their wealth. They see an in. They take over the household by finding its weak spots, sabotaging said weak spots, and replacing the same weak spots with another one of their family members until they're all basically moved in by using their sheer wit, intelligence, and people skills, because that's all that they have. They don't have the money to just buy their way through things, to buy their way through a nice life. Their wit, their intelligence, their street smarts is their superpower in this film. But what does Ali do? What weak spots does he infiltrate at Saltburn in hopes of claiming it as his own, and what is his superpower? He uses his sex appeal, I guess. calls the mom sexy, cures Venetia's eating disorder by slurping up her period blood, has sex with Farley for some reason. He does this all as a form of control and manipulation, but the funniest part is that Venetia and Farley end up still fucking hating him by the end of the movie. Venetia can't stand him and ignores him during his own birthday party, and Farley is indifferent in the very least, but still doesn't like him, going as far as to roast him at his own birthday party as well, telling him that he's a mooching phony who doesn't belong at Saltburn. If Ollie's sex appeal was gonna be his strong suit, maybe they should have made him a low-key Casanova from the start. Sure, somebody who's awkward, who comes from a fucked up background, but who's arrogant and convincing enough to get people to actually sleep with him or be sexually attracted to him, causing people to easily fall into the palm of his hand. But this doesn't happen either. He starts off the story as a nerdy fucking loser who's not even able to rizz up the girl that he almost has sex with. Of course, for her, it's in attempts to make Felix jealous, but he could have gotten the bag still. He could have gotten the bag. To then, all of a sudden, having all of this sex appeal that causes everybody at Saltburn to be horny for him in hopes of them letting their guards down, which sort of proves to be a fruitless effort, especially when he just decides to fucking kill them anyways. For that, you didn't need to rizz them up. Maybe you could have just gotten closer and closer with them as friends until you got close enough to fucking kill them.
It's Elle from the future again. Not exactly sure where I'm gonna place this in the video, but I do think it's worth discussing. I just wanted to point out a scene, though, that is supposed to develop Ollie as a character and strengthen the bond between him and the mom, Elspeth. I don't have much to say about it because I don't exactly know what it's trying to say, especially in the grand scheme of the story itself. What I'm interpreting in this scene is that Ollie is attempting to call Pamela, somebody who they had been housing at Saltburn, a liar, and evidently a moocher of the mom, Saltburn, and all of its gratuitous resources due to Pamela's supposed lies about the struggles that she's been undergoing for the last several years. Knowing what we know about Ollie, it's obvious in this scene that it seems like he's projecting himself and his entire personality onto Pamela's character. Later, we come to find out that Pamela ends up killing herself, and the mom barely reacts, saying that Pamela always loved attention. But if Pamela really was a liar about the things that she had been struggling with, would she really have killed herself? Just from a logical, common sense standpoint. Obviously, the mom is too fucking dense to question this. I've already said, and will continue to say, that she's fucking stupid, along with the rest of the family. But if Pamela was a friend and somebody who spent time at Saltburn, despite the fact that it ended up with her getting kicked out, I feel like for any normal human, this would have been a wake-up call. Now granted, what the film is trying to tell us is that these aren't normal humans due to the way that they live their lives and their riches. I also think that this scene is attempting to portray the mom and the family at Saltburn as seeing those who are impoverished as a nuisance, as people not worthy of continuing to stay within their presence and not worthy of being fully acknowledged during their time of deaths. But it's just confusing to me as to why Elspeth isn't intent on getting rid of Oliver, even when her two children are now dead. I bring that up because at the end of the day, no matter how hard the movie tries to make you believe that Oliver is mooching off this family, he was only there for a brief visit. Even if it was for a couple of months, for the summertime, nothing was ever set in stone. He was never moving in and he was never settling in there. But if this family takes Pamela, somebody who's been around them for what seems to be a long time, and can't stand her because she's broke or she's weird as fuck, then what the fuck makes Oliver any different? What exactly is mom seeing in him other than he has nice eyes and that he's perceptive? She says that he's perceptive, at least, when he starts to say that Pamela's stories were inconsistent, and as he points the finger claiming that she's a liar and has been this whole time. I don't know, maybe I'm not getting it. Maybe they like Oliver because he's quiet and they get to ramble on while he just sits and listens. But at the end of the day, the only person who would buy that shit is Elspeth. Nobody else does. Not Felix, not Venetia, not Farley, and not the father when he kicks Oliver's ass out. I just especially don't see a need for her wanting to keep Oliver around after the death of her two kids. What significance does Oliver have in her life so strongly that he's a priority in this time of objective mourning?
the priority instead of a suspect in both or at least one of these cases. The mother is so fucking dumb, it hurts my head. Like, they really did her character dirty as hell. Like, there is no way that people could be this dumb. Not even a rich-ass, totally out-of-touch person. Something else that I want to mention while we're on the topic of the mom is how frustrating it is when she just signs over the house to Oliver. Why are you giving the house to Oliver? Have you not seen a fucking crime show at any point in your life? Have you not witnessed a crime at any point in your life? Have you not read the papers at any point in your life? Are your familial assets so unimportant to you that you're just willing to give it over to some dude that you met like a few years ago? What about Farley? What about Farley's mother, your sister-in-law? And if they're irresponsible with money, there's gotta be some other family member who you can give this estate to. Someone who isn't just this random-ass guy. Maybe I'm getting frustrated for no reason because, obviously, on the topic of crime shows, we know a lot of cases of people who do sign everything over to the dubious partner who's implied in a murder, or we come to find out who has actually killed the partner in order to inherit everything that was left for them. But something that I will mention now, or that I maybe even have mentioned at this point, is that it's crazy to me how so much just so happens to work in Oliver's favor, without the cops being involved, without anybody really asking him any groundbreaking questions, without any kind of police investigation. It just really doesn't make any sense to me considering all the context and just how much shit he's been behind from the start of the movie. Go ahead, argue with me, and tell me that the family's dumb, and that's the point because they're rich. But the rest of the world wouldn't be. This gigantic fucking castle that's a historical monument and a marvel. One that's worthy enough of being put in the papers because of the father's passing. Something that I'm just now noticing while going off on a rampage is that there are no fucking stakes in this movie because of the fact that Oliver never gets caught for anything. And how much more interesting would that be? If there was somebody tailing him, if somebody was on his ass, if somebody was wondering why Oliver was so close to every single tragedy that followed this family. If only. It makes it so boring that there's not a single repercussion for any of his actions, when in the real world, I think that there fucking would be. And man, who knows? It might have even made things so much more interesting than the way that this movie becomes more and more stale as you get closer and closer towards the ending credits. A lot of the times in this video, I call the family at Saltburn stupid, dumb even. I also drive home that I'm pretty sure the reason the film purposefully does this is to show us that rich white people are stupid, and that is how Ollie got his hands on Saltburn. But again, and to make a comparison on the levels of stupidity, or why I think they're far too stupid for the film to make any sense, let's use a comparison to Parasite. In Parasite, one of the acquaintances of the poor family, the Kims, go out of their way to tell the son who is in need of work that the matriarch of the wealthy Park family is a bit of an airhead. Or I believe he says that the mother is rather simple-minded. Regardless, he says this as a way to ease the son's concern, as the acquaintance is referring him to be a potential tutor for the daughter of the Parks. And throughout the movie, we are definitely shown that the mother is simple-minded and somewhat easily convinced. Her husband, however, is a little more forthcoming about the fact that there needs to be boundaries between the Parks and those who serve the household, who, of course, end up being the entire family of the Kims. Now, we know that the ending of Parasite is a chaotic one. I'm not gonna try to give away or spoil too much, but they do tell us what ends up happening to the remaining family of the impoverished Kims. However, they never do tell us what ends up happening to the remaining of the Parks, and there's a reason for that. Sure, the Parks were dumb enough to get themselves involved with the Kims to the point of all chaos ensuing that causes them to need to leave their home. But the Parks weren't dumb enough to lose everything. You don't need to know what happens to them at the end of the movie, because outside of the trauma from this experience, they've got all the money in the world to make it out of this. Although they will be needing therapy for a long time, they'll be just fine. And as a matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the mother, who at the beginning of the story was simple-minded,
would be hardened from this experience, learning, therefore closing off the possibility for a situation like that to happen ever again. And granted, that last part is just a theoretical, but I know just as well as anybody around me that from traumatic experiences, if you take nothing from them, you can at least learn something. But then we have the Cattons, the family at Saltburn, and each and every single last one of them is so fucking stupid that they lose not only everything that they own, but every single one of their lives in the process, and it doesn't make any sense, especially with this character Pamela, who is in the movie very briefly at the beginning and who we mentioned earlier. Pamela is there to be a moocher, someone who is such a mess and who can't get on her own feet, so she needs to rely on those at Saltburn who are extending the olive branch, allegedly. Apparently having her around was such an unpleasant experience, as she proved to be too fucked up and too boring to keep around for much longer. And what do you do with unpleasant experiences? You learn from them so that they don't happen again. Is it a stretch to say that it would have been human nature to not want to be in another situation similar to the one regarding housing Pamela, a moocher, and someone who comes from an unfortunate background, which is supposed to mirror none other than Oliver here? Furthermore, when Oliver points a finger towards Pamela, saying that her stories were inconsistent and that she was possibly a liar, would it also have been a stretch if the mother were to look at Oliver a little sideways and pick up on the fact that his supposed broke ass may have been projecting a little bit in this moment? I mean, why else is he so perceptive, in the words of Elspeth? And again, with Elspeth's lack of knowledge regarding Oliver's actual background that's later on revealed, would she not in the very least feel like she would have to tread his presence with caution, or be very wary about his presence and arrival at Saltburn, considering the fact that he is a stranger, seemingly unlike Pamela? But no, Elspeth is a complete fucking idiot. The father is a complete fucking idiot. Venetia is a complete fucking idiot. This guy takes a fucking walk. I guess this guy does too. And this guy is gullible, which is fine, and a common archetype that could have been played on and explored. But there's just no way that I could fit into my head that this family of prominence and every last one of them could have let this happen. Could have let things get to this point in such a short amount of time without getting the police involved more thoroughly, with someone that they barely even know, with someone who has no political or financial prominence, with someone who objectively has no charisma, as time and time again at every single party and gathering he attends at Saltburn, he's avoided, hard to remember. Our conversations with him are straight up cut short because of how boring, useless, and unpleasant he is. Dude, at the night of his birthday party, nobody even knows his name. There's about 2 people who end up singing it out of a group of hundreds. To completely lose Saltburn to this fucking loser, to this soy boy, to this beta cuck, to this reject, it just isn't strong enough. It just doesn't make any sense. Not just a couple thousands of dollars did they lose, not just some jewelry, their entire estate and presumably all their money with it. Do you see the extremes here? Do you see why I have such a problem with the way that this film wraps itself up?
My god, dude, there's so much in Saltburn that just so happens to pan out for Ollie as a sheer bout of luck in the grand scheme of things. And I'll be honest, the motherfucker is lucky as hell that things happened coincidentally as they did, and that this family and their logic is as flawed and as stupid as it was throughout the movie for things to have ended up in his favor. Even the first scene of him popping Felix's tire, the scenario of him offering to give his bike to Felix. What are the odds that Felix ends up lounging by this tree and this grass instead of just noticing the tire was popped and phoning a friend in that bike garage for help immediately? Or just straight up walking, running in hopes of getting to class on time, amongst literally the 90% of all the other forms of sabotage attempted by Ollie that once again just so happened to work out for him. For him to have gotten everything he wanted while not even nearly being as deceiving and persistent as the Kims from Parasite. Originally when writing the script, I was getting through this movie and having a hard time finding bad things to say. I thought to myself, damn, maybe I was just drunk and pretentious as hell the first time I watched it, thinking that the movie was off or I didn't like something about it. But Then we get to the antics with Venetia, and then we get to Felix's death, and I feel like the movie quite literally loses the plot. My keyboard was getting a run for its fucking money, bro. There's something that I've heard before, it's a writing sin, and I'm not gonna quote it the proper way, so if anybody knows what I'm talking about, please write it in the comments. But it's something along the lines of saying that you should never write your characters around the plot or to fit the plot. The characters and the plot are supposed to be something that go hand in hand and work together to create your story. But I think this movie does this. I think this movie had a plot and just started to change the characters to fit the mold of what they ended up wanting to do with the plot of this movie. And it's not good. It's where the inconsistencies come from. It's why the movie starts off feeling like one movie and ends off feeling like a completely different one. At the beginning of the movie, all the characters start out kind of solid. Farley and Felix being the most realistic to me. Farley being the most realistic and understood, as annoying as he may seem, because he is always speaking his mind. Unlike Clifford the big red dog over here, who we know fuck all about other than he's nice and he's tall. Or Venetia, the one who straight up seems to change her mind towards the end of the film. And then there's Oliver, who starts off a weird, strange, degenerate creep loser, and ends the movie being cool and sly and witty. I'm sorry, that weird ass motherfucker should have immediately been suspected for murder. And he low-key was, not only and low-key by Farley and I guess Venetia, but also the fucking butler, who ends up going missing as well at some point during the movie. He was suspicious and weary of Ollie from the get. And he's the butler. He's not just some guy. He's been with the family for a long time. Is it really a stretch to say that he wouldn't have said something to the family or tried to figure something out, especially after the 2 deaths of the children and after Saltburn literally becomes owned by Ollie? What was the point of all those scenes of tension between the butler and Ollie, of the butler basically suspecting Ollie of being a weird fuck if they weren't even going to do anything with it? This is what I mean when I say there are so many more questions I have and things that just don't really add up or make much sense to me in the grand scheme of things. Again, part of me was reluctant to make this video, but upon second watch, there were a lot of things that were solidified for me. A lot of the things I told myself were probably in the film to answer my questions, straight up weren't. And whatever character development these characters experience by the time of their deaths or the end of the film is just unnatural and nonsensical to me. Once more, I do really think that there's a lot to love about Saltburn. There's a reason that it's popped off, and I really started to feel like, damn, like, I love this fruity ass movie with these aesthetic ass backgrounds and songs and themes. But then we hit a point where it all starts to fall apart. It doesn't really make much sense to me, and it doesn't really make any sense how the story easily unfolds into Ollie's favor, and especially within the decisions or lack thereof that each of these characters make. And if it's a class thing, a thesis on the higher class is secretly so stupid and unaware of anything, sure, it may be true, but I think we're talking about 2 different kinds of awareness then by that point. And to be so easily stupid and vulnerable as to fall into Ollie's plan and end up giving up Saltburn on account of it seems so unrealistic to me. Because one thing a rich person's not gonna give up easily, one thing a man with a lot of money is not stupid with, is his fucking money and his assets. And if we want to talk about a movie that displays real lechery or real class struggles, Parasite does it so much better. So, I'm tired of talking about Saltburn. Maybe it's called Saltburn because it leaves a salty, burny taste in your mouth. Shit starts off so great, and then you're just sitting in your room pissed, staring at the wall, like, bitch, what the fuck did I just watch? And not even in a cute or quirky or silly way either. I wish I could be as happy as Ollie is in the final scene, prancing around with his succulent ass cheeks jiggling all over the place. I guess that isn't me. Dumbass ending for what started off as a decent movie. It just feels rushed and underdeveloped, and like they didn't know what to do with it, so they were like, oh, let's just make it edgy and start killing people, and then say it's got something to do with hating rich people and the upper class. Even though there was a plot about a guy being in love with another guy at the beginning and the first half of the movie, and even though as annoying as this rich family was, they treated Ollie with decency, so I don't really know how I could possibly despise them as characters by the end of the movie, or for it to be a hit piece on how shitty rich people are. It's just all over the place, but I think I've said enough. So tell me what you guys think, and I'll see you in the next video. I don't know, man, my fucking ass itches. My ass feels like itchy. Like I need to go wash my ass after watching this. I need to go wash my ass right now.
You're now listening to Daydream Waves.
What up, what up, gangsta? We're in the hot seat. I wore my British repellent shirt. I was okay with British people, but this movie made me homophobic. British phobic. Movie made me British phobic. I'm gonna be going off the top of my head for this small segment. I don't know if I'm gonna be putting it at the end, where I'm gonna be putting it. But my best friend brought something to my attention. There was a TikTok that she came across. She was like, I'm gonna send it to you so you can see what you think. What's crazy about these videos is that I start them, I go through the script, and then as I continue to watch the movie over and over again to get scenes and screenshots, there's more and more that I realize that I don't fucking like. So the video starts off an hour's worth of footage, an hour, 30 minutes worth of footage, and it just grows and grows because I just have so much shit to talk. But I did want to talk about this TikTok that she brought to my attention, and it's facts you probably didn't know about Saltburn. So, some of the information is just stupid shit, maybe some interesting thing to know or to note. But there are two slides in specific that stuck out to me that I wanted to talk about while we're on the tail end, hopefully, of this video. So, the first one, Barry Keoghan, is that how we say his name? Barry Keoghan created 5 different versions of Oliver while filming and had a different notebook for each. And honestly, I can fucking tell. This character goes through so many different changes and so many different emotions, and he kind of doesn't make any sense to me, as previously mentioned, for a multitude of reasons in the film. From the start, him being a complete and utter loser, to ending the movie being the Rizzler, master fucking Rizzler, by basically banging half of a family. I also mentioned the fact that it's obvious he's got no social skills, or in the very least, he's not a very charismatic character, as he's a flop in every party scene or social scene that we have. I also mentioned that his only strong suit seems to be that he's quiet, and this only really works with Elspeth and also the father of Saltburn, because they babble and babble on, and being somebody who babbles and babbles on, maybe it's nice to have somebody who can shut the fuck up and listen from once in a while, from time to time. That's the only upside I see from Oliver as a character, but you can tell that there are different versions of him, or that Barry Keoghan didn't really know who exactly he wanted Oliver to be, how he wanted to portray Oliver, and it seems like they gave the actors a lot of freedom, or at least Barry, from what I'm seeing, to kind of do his own thing. And I don't know, while I guess I could say that that's a good thing to give to an actor, it also just kind of makes it murky, because I just don't think that Ollie is a very compelling character, and you can tell that he has a bunch of switches of personality, and maybe we could have made that into some kind of character type, you know. I know it's not called multiple personality disorder anymore, but maybe they could have played on that in some kind of way if the movie was written better, or written to fit that personality type of Ollie. And what prompted me to finally record this segment of the video was a scene that I was watching where, after the truth comes out, after Felix realizes that Ollie isn't actually a broke bitch, and that he actually does come from a loving family, we see that Oliver is bawling his fucking eyes out. Now that he's faced with the realization that Felix no longer wants to be friends with him, he's obviously very upset, but this is his fault because he was caught in his lie, and I don't get why he's crying. I'm sure that this video is so annoying with me saying, I don't understand, why is this, why is that, but it's because I just think that it's really stupid, and I think that these characters are super inconsistent. I think if we were sticking to that sociopathic Oliver, the one that we see in the final scenes of the movie, he wouldn't be there crying. I feel like this is where we see the split of the two different notebooks, right? Because we have that one scene where Farley makes him sing, "I love you, you pay my rent." And he went to his room and was so angry that he punched his mirror. In this scene, he's upset and he's crying, and I just feel like we need to stick to one character type here. You were caught in your lie. Why the fuck are you crying? Why the fuck are you emotional? Because you lost your friend? I would be fucking pissed. I would be fucking pissed with my mom. I would be fucking pissed that Felix went out of his way to look through my fucking phone or pick up my fucking phone, therefore leading him to find my parents. I'd be fucking pissed, but he's crying here, and again, I just feel like that kind of is a split of the character that we see for the rest of the movie, which is the cunning, sly, slick-ass, sociopathic Oliver. It's just not very convincing to me. And again, I could see why somebody would be emotional after being caught in a lie, but somebody who turns out to be as evil as Ollie, I just don't really buy it. I think there would have been a more visceral reaction. You could tell me, yes, there was, because he ended up killing Felix, but I don't know, even in that moment, it would have been more compelling to see that switch, like the dark side really come on of him thinking to himself, like, oh, I need to do something about this. And again, you might be thinking, well, that's why the twist came in. We thought that he was sad and emotional, but then he ends up being a murderer. And again, I just don't fucking buy it. I don't think that it meshes very well with the film. I think that it makes the characters very inconsistent and messy. And I'm getting off topic because I'm forgetting that we have something else to talk about here. Basically, for the first slide, I can tell that he filmed 5 different versions of Oliver. If this was a multiple personality disorder movie, maybe that would have been fine and well for him, but for sticking to a character who is supposed to be solid, for one that's supposed to make sense, because usually people don't have drastic changes in their life unless they have some kind of personality disorder that causes that. Yeah, the character's just inconsistent. I don't fucking like his dumbass. Alright, so now, poor fucking Barry. Like, I think this guy's a fucking weirdo or something. I'm saying poor Barry, but I don't know. Look, so the next one. This graveyard scene was not in the original script. Barry Keoghan requested a closed set in order to try something. And of course, we're now referring to the scene where he strips butt-ass naked, puts his dick in Felix's grave, and begins humping that motherfucker like it's a thing to do. Yeah, I mean, what is there even to say? I don't even know what I was gonna originally say other than cringe. Not very based. He's not really goated with the sauce either. Yeah, I think he's a little cringe here for that one. Yeah, this guy Barry, I mean, he's got pretty eyes and a nice jawline, but I think that they should have just done a case study on his weird ass. I think something's going on up there. I think there's a little something off there that needs to be studied. Obviously this scene is weird, and I don't know, at this point it's just like, I guess if I had to interpret it or play devil's advocate or see it in some type of way, it's like, okay, I thought about this the other night, actually. So, in the Devilman video, right, we talked about this a little bit in Devilman, the concept of loving somebody in such a toxic manner that you want to take everything that they have, and also that dynamic of, well, if I can't have you, nobody can, leading to maybe some sort of event where one character murders the other because they don't want anybody else to have him. Alright, I'll play devil's advocate. Maybe that's what's going on with this character. I'll throw that out there. I've definitely thought about it while writing this script and while thinking about people shitting on me in the comments and telling me that I don't know anything about movies and that I just need to go sit in a corner and fist my own ass somewhere. I could see maybe in this scene, Oliver realizes that he killed the one thing that he loved, and now there is no reality, there is no future, there is no chance of friendships, there is no chance of
furthering the friendship into a potential relationship. He will never actually get to drink Felix's warm bathtub cummies in the flesh ever again, nor will he even be able to consume Felix's cummies if they were in a hypothetical relationship because he's dead now. Okay, I can see that. Again, at this point of the movie though, I was already kind of like annoyed and pissed off with everything that was going on and starting to fall apart and not really make sense in my eyes. So this kind of just became another like, wow, look at this like fucking crazy edgy thing that we're doing. This film is so edgy and crazy. Are you gonna go home and tell your friends that this film is edgy and crazy? The edgiest and craziest thing you've ever seen? Yeah, you better go home and tell your friends that, because this is crazy. We got a dude fucking a grave right now. And it's like, alright, I just wish there was more character development to back up all this stuff. Alright, I'll let this scene slide. I will let this scene slide. We've known that Oliver was a creep from the start. I guess I just wanted to talk about it, and I also guess I mostly just wanted to talk about how much of a freak this Barry guy is. But that's enough of this part of the rant.
Be sure to leave a like, subscribe, let me know what Saltburn made you feel. Let me know if you felt queer baited, let me know if you felt good movie baited, and yeah, let's just have fun with this. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next video.